Hello, everybody. I would like to let you know that our program will start in the next few moments. But just so you're all aware, your sound and videos have been turned off, but you are all invited to use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions that you may have for us to answer at the end of the program. So just a couple, maybe another minute or two, and then we'll start off. Okay, I think we have a good amount of people here to get started. So first off, my name is Ryan Guillou, and I'm the curator at the San Francisco Botanical Garden. I want to welcome and thank all of our Striving Circle and Legacy members for attending our Striving Circle event today. That also includes another Striving Circle member and our guest speaker for this evening, Mia Monroe, from the a park ranger at the Muir Woods National Park. So each year I always look forward to our Striving Circle walks. And this year it's gonna be more of a Striving Circle talk. Obviously, we're not allowed to see each other in person for all of our safekeeping. But I do look forward to seeing all of you at the garden sometime soon, hopefully in the future, and in good health and safety. So as you all know, San Francisco is blessed with a beautifully cool and foggy climate. And this heavy influence of fog has really shaped our collections over the years, and really changed how the floor of our garden looks to many other gardens you'd find around the United States. Our living collection boasts plants from all over the world, with the most unique plants coming from most unique and endangered species coming from other cool foggy regions, much like our own here in San Francisco. It's because of this that the garden is looking to making bigger strides toward growing and preserving fog-loving, but also fog-dependent species from different parts of the world, and serving as an ex situ conservation site. So it is only fitting that today we're going to learn about one of California's most iconic species, and definitely a plant whose existence over millions of years has depended on California's foggy northern coast. And I, of course, am referring to our coast redwoods, Sequoia sempervirens. And though you can come to the garden 365 days a year to visit our Redwood Grove, which is over 100 years old and quite magnificent, it's not every day that we get to go for a walk and tour them with our speaker, Mia Monroe. So for formal introductions, Mia here has been a park ranger for the National Park Service National Park Service for nearly 40 years, and she serves on the National Park Service Marin Community Liaison and seeks to find more ways to connect people with redwoods and their conservation. So I hope that all of you are just as eager as I am to learn from Mia today, not only about her work, but also, especially after this season of devastating fires, what the state of the redwoods is. So Mia, I will let you kick it off. And again, one quick reminder, please feel free to submit questions in the Q&A function below. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this invitation and wonderful orientation to me, Ryan. I've been a lifelong walker in both Golden Gate Park and also in the Botanical Garden, and that's where I go when I need renewal, when I need to connect. And I just can't believe what an amazing treasure it is right in the heart of San Francisco. And I've been watching those redwoods grow, and I've been watching the good care and management of the botanical Garden and the Striving Society. And so thank you, thank you. And I would like to share the Redwood Forest with you. And I just invite you to all sit back, breathe in that foggy air, and take a walk with me to learn some things. Now, I did ask Ryan while we were warming up. I looked at this picture and I was starting to get in the mood, and I realized, wow, I'm at Muir Woods, but this picture is the Botanical Garden. This picture is the Redwood Forest right there in Golden Gate Park. And it is a beautiful recreated forest. And I'm going to take you to Muir Woods, but reference many of the things that I find inspiring, hopeful, and well with your beautiful Redwood Forest there. One thing that impresses me right off as I welcome you to Muir Woods is how both Muir Woods and the Botanical Garden have taken such care to welcome people back in this age, this COVID age. They have found ways to really build on the message that nature is healing. Nature is a refuge. Nature is a safe place to be. And you're going to learn that redwoods are the place to go through one-way direction of paths, through social and spatial distancing, through encouraging lower visitation so everybody can have enough space around them. The redwood forests are the place to go. So tonight, I'd like to welcome you to the place where I have been working for a number of decades, Muir Woods National Monument, an old-growth primeval redwood forest in Marin County. And I'm sure if we were doing one of those polls, most of you would be raising your hands right now and saying that this too is a favorite place of yours, a place where you've watched your children take first walks, where you bring guests from out of town, where you know things are right. This is the primeval redwood forest. And I have some good news, bad news. As you probably know, this is how the northern coast of California, Big Sur to Oregon looked up until 200 years ago. And now just a remnant of these old growth forests, less than 5%, are found in small protected pockets, usually in national park or state parks, and a few private reserves. This is the primeval forest defined by old trees, but also the healthiness of a regenerating forest of young trees, like you can see in the foreground. We have young baby trees, we have saplings, we have middle-aged trees, 200 years old. You can think of your botanical garden trees as middle-aged, and then you have the old giants. But we're going to learn in this program how it's more than trees, it's more than a forest, it's a habitat and a refuge. And at Muir Woods, we have taken great care to also welcome people safely and to also protect and venture into the forest in a way that protects the forest as well. And what I'm referring to not only is the small scale of people in this amazing tallest trees of the world forest, but also the boardwalk that allows the healthy forest and the natural flow of water and the close up. You know, it's amazing at Muir Woods, just like the Botanical Garden, you can be right in the forest and feel you're right there with the trees. Next slide, please. The primeval forest is not only defined by the age of the trees, the plants and animals that live there, but it's also defined by intangible things like the way the light filters through, by the peace and quiet. Those are unique features of this old growth forest, and one that people calculate when is the right time to come visit. And when you're in a place like Muir Woods, you can feel that fresh air. I hear that from so many people, that in this world, fresh air is a precious commodity. The peace and quiet is something special, and it adds up to that special, unique feeling that you're in a refuge. Next slide, please. Now, I've been talking about the age of the trees and the young forest coming up among them, but also characteristic of a healthy old growth forest is the cycles of life and death and birth and rebirth and resiliency. And in this forest scene, you see all those classic features. You see the tall columns of the ancient trees, you see the understory of ferns, and you also see a log. Now that log is like a long-lasting sponge releasing moisture into the forest. It's also like an apartment house where lots of plants and animals can find a niche to grow, and it's a slow release fertilizer, returning its nutrients back to the soil. And so a healthy forest is not only the living trees, but it's also the slow dying resiliency of the logs. And when they're in the creek, we call them large woody debris. When they're standing, we call them snags. And that's what brings the pileated woodpeckers in. That's what contributes to the healthy forest floor. That's what contributes to the moisture. Next slide, please. Now with this rain, already my email is filling with, when do you think the salmon are going to come upstream to spawn? And I kind of smile because even though the spectacle of the large silver salmon returning to their home stream after their frolic out in the Pacific Ocean is so dramatic, I kind of smile because actually the salmon are in Redwood Creek and the Redwood streams all year long, because these salmon are coming upstream to spawn, to lay their eggs in the gravel. The eggs will hatch. The baby fish will use the coastal streams as their nursery for the first 18 months of their life, and then they will move down slowly towards the ocean with each successive rain to go out to the place where they grow up, the Pacific, before winter rains like we have send a chemical message. Maybe your home stream is ready. Now they do something else amazing. They return to spawn, but they also die after reproducing. And of course, they are not surprising to us since we all love salmon, but they also are an incredible part of the food chain and web of life, because so many animals are nourished by the salmon, and they drag the carcasses up into the forest. And I'm sure many of you are gardeners and know that fish fertilizer is an important part of your healthy garden plant regime. Well, that's what it's also doing. The fish are also doing naturally for the forest floor, is helping give fertilizer back to the redwood forest and so many of the other plants. A huge focus of the work at Muir Woods is restoring the salmon wrens. They are a rare and endangered species, which means they're on the brink of extinction. They're a keystone species, critical for the health of the forest, the animals, and the trees. And so a huge part of our work is restoring this species. When you are able to take a walk in Muir Woods, you will see just how much of our current huge palette of projects called Redwood Renewal is focused on making a healthier stream to restore and recover this species. And keep a lookout on the Muir Woods website, because when the salmon starts spawning, we will be posting. And this year we're hoping for a increased run, because we had to send some of our baby fish up to a hatchery. The Fish and Wildlife Service told us that we were on the brink of extirpation, a local wipeout or extinction of this species because of the long drought we've been part of. So we chose to, and this is what this picture is all about. We chose to take the baby fish and eggs that this fish is about to lay and send them to a hatchery. I called it sending kids to college or sending kids to camp or a spa, to grow up with nearly 100% success rate. They came back to Muir Woods in the last few years to help rebuild the population. An amazing effort that we called Coho Jumpstart. Okay, what's our next species up? Muir Woods is a day use area, so I wanted to share this nocturnal species with you, also an endangered species called the northern spotted owl. And the northern spotted owl's southernmost nesting area is at Muir Woods, and we have a healthy population. You can see those little owlets around their mother. And this is also a species of critical concern to us. We want to make sure its prey species, the dusky-footed wood rat, is abundant. We want to make sure we have lots of snags for them to nest in. And if you've been to Muir Woods, not only is there the natural peace and quiet of a redwood forest, but we have gone to groundbreaking efforts over the last 30 years to quiet everything. We've moved the dumpsters out. We were the first park to go to an electric fleet. We even have quiet cash registers. And we pioneered the quiet season from February 1st to the end of July, so no noise larger than a conversation can happen at Muir Woods, so that nothing wakes up our owls who are resting during the day. These owls are really important because, like the salmon and like the redwood, they are a keystone species at the top of the food chain. And importantly, they're a species that we look for to see if we're doing our job. Are they here? Are they nesting? Is the population stable? And just to tease you a little bit, this is what they sound like. So if you plan a dusk visit to Muir Woods, you might hear that denizen of the old growth forest, the spotted owl. Our next slide, please. Well, the salmon, as I mentioned, are in some phase of their life in Redwood Creek all year. The spotted owl is a resident species, but not this one. The ladybug arrives during our first heat spell, usually in May or June, and there's these little flecks of orange that fill the air. And on each cool day, they settle down and the clusters get bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you come to Muir Woods during the summer and fall, ask where the ladybugs are clustering. And at first you'll walk right by them because they blend in to the redwood forest. But as soon as you see them, you will start to see millions all the way around. We can only speculate why these huge aggregations form, but we do know that orange and black is nature's warning signs, stop sign. Don't eat me, you will get sick. So a lot of them is a lot of stop signs. And also when it comes to mating time, which is in early spring, heck, if you're in a big cluster, you have a better chance of finding a mate. So they're clustering at Muir Woods now, and they will be protected from the rains by leaf litter. And then in early spring, the pregnant females leave and fly to the inland valley where they lay their eggs on the crops in our inland valleys, and voraciously their larvae will eat aphids and then transform into the adult ladybug, which will spread its wings on the next heat spell next May and return to the coastal area, such as Muir Woods. Let's see who we have up next. Now at Muir Woods, we want to know what's living there. And for the National Park's centennial 100-year birthday, National Geographic sponsored BioBlitzes. And these BioBlitzes are a 24-hour scientific endeavor to learn everything that is living there, from bats to mosquitoes, fish to lichen, hawks to stellar jays, banana slugs to what else? Ferns. And we, the Save the Redwoods League, invited a team, the world famous team based up at Humboldt State University, to come climb the redwoods at Muir Woods. And we invited them to be part of our BioBlitz, because believe it or not, we didn't really know where our tallest tree was. We didn't know how tall or how old our trees are. And in this day of climate change, we also wanted to know other things like how much carbon did they sequester. We wanted to know what was living up in the canopy. And of course, we wanted to know if our trees were healthy. But a landmark of this BioBlitz is it wasn't just scientists. Next slide, please. It was also young people and their parents and their classes who, as community scientists, worked hand in hand with those BioBlitz scientists to inventory over a 24-hour period and help produce that comprehensive list. We are really proud of our educational efforts that go from being junior rangers. You can see we were the first park to move away from plastic junior ranger badges to recycled wood. And there's an educational lesson that that young lady has done, and she's taking her proud pledge to share and learn and visit often. And she was also part of one of those BioBlitzes, getting to work with the scientists. Next slide, please. Now, our park has short paths, benches to look, and many bridges so that varying loops are possible in the park and a chance to get as many different kinds of views of the forest. We're so proud of our bridges, and yet we learned that our bridges are part of the problem. They're too low and they're too short, so they're actually impeding the natural flow of the creek. What you can kind of see here is our wonderful bridges, but you can also see how straight the creek channel is, and you can see how little vegetation or streamside riparian plants there are. So we're rethinking our bridges and rethinking our paths for a healthier forest, as well as expanding the opportunities to experience the park. Next slide, please. Because we want you to have as many ways to view. We want benches where you can look up at these columns going up at Muir Woods, 280 feet. If you go farther north, they go up nearly 400 feet. And ponder, why are they so straight? Why does the bark tend to be twisted like a skein of yarn? What's way up there? And I had the amazing experience of being in the park for both the 50th, 60th, and now this year, the 75th anniversary of the United Nations. Because that body, when it was forming in San Francisco 75 years ago, was looking for what the universal language that all of those delegates from all over the world spoke. And that language is the language of nature. And they wanted the peace of a redwood forest. They wanted the resilience. They wanted the hope that a walk in nature could be. And so Muir Woods was the place that hosted the first gathering of the United Nations and has honored the subsequent milestone markers, including this year, with walks in the forest and recommitting ourselves to the value of sustainability, resilience, and working together to have a healthier green world for everybody. And you can get that connection every time that you look way up. Next slide, please. Now, this is a classic exhibit at Muir Woods, the crosscut. And I imagine a ranger here in 1930 said, if I'm going to get asked one more time how old these trees are, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then he heard a crash in the forest. He ran up to Cathedral Grove. He saw one of the tall trees had fallen. He sliced it up like a loaf of bread. He counted the rings, and he determined that the older trees at Muir Woods are over 1,000 years old, because each year, he thought and learned that each year of the tree's life, it adds a new ring. And then over the years, we expanded that understanding of what you can get from a crosscut, because you can also learn the fire frequency. You can learn the eras of drought and rain. And so we have learned that fire has been a regular presence in the forest. Every 8 to 20 years, a fire used to sweep through here, and the redwoods just healed and kept on growing. We've also learned that the drought periods have been kind of frequent, as have the rainy periods. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the scars are very present at Muir Woods. The fires burn hot and intense at the base of the trees, opening up the bottom of the trees and burning the wood inside, causing these fire scars that then become homes for bats and small critters. And you can actually see it in Muir Woods where they heal in between. Next slide. You can see the fire scar in the burls on these trees here. And I went to Emily Burns, a fire scientist, to learn what she is seeing at Big Basin and Armstrong Redwoods. And she is so excited because already there are new shoots growing at the base of the trees. Already the ferns are sprouting. And of course, there's many seeds that are falling to the ground, promising a very resilient spring. The animals can find and shelter in place in a fire. And she had other things, such as this is going to be a great mushroom year. she was really, really excited because she knows that redwoods are resilient. They have lived through many fires. They've been on Earth since the time of the dinosaurs. Through their thick bark and tannin, they can survive. They are the epitome not only of survivors, but thrivers. The forest is resilient. And I've provided in some of the links where you can go for Emily's talk on renewal in the redwood forest after fire. And you can see in places like Muir Woods, the char and the singe and the fire scars that show that these trees have made it through these fires. Burls are also a clue to another, that's that knobby stuff, that redwoods have two methods of reproduction. They can reproduce from seeds that come out of the cones, but they also have these knobby things called burls that are asexual reproduction. And I know this is going to sound a little scary, but redwoods love disaster. After the disasters of fire and flood, these burls are stimulated to begin sprouting and quickly fill the forest floor with redwood sprouts. Okay, the next slide. We are rebuilding the paths and boardwalks in Muir Woods so they are better placed and resilient also to fire and flooding, the renewing effects. So if you go to Muir Woods, you'll see trail work underway. Our boardwalks are also key to the park's accessibility. We want to welcome everybody, children in strollers, wheelchairs, those who just don't want to have to pay attention to one foot in front of another. The boardwalks are key. Next slide. And here's a place not only with boardwalks, but benches to lie down on and look up in the forest or contemplate the bird life or the peace and quiet. The next slide. Now you're probably already planning your visit to Muir Woods, and also in those areas that have been ravaged by fire, the seeds are already starting to sprout and promising what's ahead. And soon we will see the most common plant in a redwood forest, the redwood sorrel, and it is an early spring bloomer. The next one, please. We have a bet in Muir Woods. Will the first flower of spring bloom before the first day of winter? This is the fetid adder's tongue, and it's blends right in with those brown colors. So smell it, listen to that name, fetid, stinky adder's tongue. And as you walk through the forest, that will be your clue where to look for it. Next slide. And then one of the earliest to bloom is Trillium ovatum, the wake up to spring. So these are the things to look forward to if you plan an early visit in January, February, or March. What's ahead for us on the next slide? Right now, this is what Muir Woods looks like, and hopefully with lots of winter rain, Redwood Creek swelling and sending that message to the salmon, come back to spawn. We are adding redwood logs to the creek to slow down those floodwaters, so gravels will be deposited for the salmon eggs, and also it will rebuild the forest to help flood the forest and bring the rejuvenating effects of floodwater into the forest. Redwoods are thirsty plants. They need that fog, as Ryan told us, but they also need flooding now and then for deep watering. What's next? I mentioned this earlier when I talked about redwoods having asexual reproduction, not only from seeds, but from burls sprouting, and they form that amazing characteristic of the redwood forest, the family circle. What's next? Volunteerism, one of the ultimate ways to spend time in our parks, time in our forests. When we can, please consider coming back to help the rejuvenation of these parks, whether it's the Botanical Garden or Muir Woods or many, many parks. Thanks to volunteers, we give tours and talks, we clean facilities, we do planting and weeding. Volunteers are the mainstay. Thank you to those of you who already share your time that way. What else is going on in our net? And then there's, of course, rangers like me to welcome you. And Muir Woods has an amazing crew. They're there to welcome, put you to work, help your children learn, swear you in as junior rangers, and then also show you some of the secrets that are out, like one of the things that's crawling on the forest floor now. Who's out there now? Ah, this rough-skinned newt, also taking advantage of these moist days to get to the creek to spawn. And that's one of the reasons why the boardwalk is important, is it can go under the boardwalk rather than on the path and be squished. We have so many different critters, many of them like this one. You might walk right by it because this one, the banana slug, kind of blends in too. They're the garbage men of the forest. So what else do we have? Some questions and answers. Oh, I know what else we have, our most recent critter to return. Let's have our final slide, the western pond turtle, extirpated or gone from the park for a long time, but slowly coming back thanks to the work of another partner, the San Francisco Zoo, which is bringing this native turtle back. So come hang out with us, come see the work, come get peace and quiet in a safe environment. What else do we have to go on here, Ryan? Did we get some questions or comments? Thank you to our members, of course.
Thank you so much, Mia. That was fantastic and such lovely photos. And I'm really excited to hear about the Western pond turtle myself. So that's quite cool. So for everybody, we have some time for questions and answers for Mia. So I want to remind everybody to please submit any questions you have into the Q&A function at the bottom. And I will do my best to group them so we can answer as many things as possible. So Mia, I have our first question. Are there any reforestation projects of redwoods along the coast?
Well, that's a good question. Most of the reforestation planting redwoods happens on private land that is still under timber harvest. Most of the state parks and national parks practice healing the forest and letting the success of our restoration be witnessed by the natural reseeding. And because redwoods can grow from sprouts, the natural regeneration. That's kind of a clue that we're doing our job right. So we spend most of our time stopping erosion, rebuilding the soil, rebuilding the creek channel, and our planting. We do planting, and it's usually of the understory plants and trees. It's usually helping rebuild the mycorrhizal or mushroom components. Now, having said that, I think in Marin, there's an effort by SPAWN, that's an organization under Turtle Island Network, that is encouraging private landowners and public agencies to plant 10,000 trees. So instead of a deck, consider a tree. Instead of a patio, consider a smaller patio and a redwood. So do you mind if I keep going for a minute on this?
Certainly, yes. Yeah.
Because one of the things that we learned in our BioBlitz is that redwoods are going through an unprecedented growth spurt right now. Unprecedented. They've been on Earth since the time of the dinosaurs, long time. And they are growing faster, taller, bigger than ever before. One thing that scientists are learning is that unlike us, redwoods grow throughout their long life, which can be 2,000 years. They keep growing out and they grow up little by little. And what that means is that thanks to what I think of as the miracle of photosynthesis, that's taking light and carbon dioxide, they transform it into botanical food and oxygen, which they breathe out for us and for the world. And since we know that we're going through a carbon dioxide crisis that's kind of fueling our climate crises right now, there's more carbon dioxide out there, so they can take as many deep breaths as they want to. And then, Ryan, I almost cried when you talked about the fog lovers in the botanical garden and how that's an emphasis for you, because some bad news, good news, is that there's 30% less fog. And that means there's a rare opportunity because of photosynthesis for redwoods to get more sunlight. So thanks to more CO2, carbon dioxide, and a little more sunlight, they are growing at an unprecedented rate, which means they are giving out oxygen in unbelievable quantities and moisture, and they are their own fog factories. So that's why Spawn is offering redwoods as the hope for the future. Plant a redwood, reduce climate change, expand the amount of oxygen. They are offering it as one solution we can all embrace. And we discovered also that all important carbon sequestration, because they live so long as living trees and then very long as logs on the ground, they are holding on to carbon longer than anything else. You can tell I'm in love with redwoods. I hope everyone is too. So that's why there are some replanting efforts, and consider a place where you can put one.
Love it, love it. Yeah, I have quite a few more questions.
Oh no, okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. But this is
great.
all great to learn about, because we have a lot of eager guests. So one is, what are the plans for fire recovery after the recent fires?
Well, the first thing that they're doing is an assessment of just how much damage, and that's why they're learning that the forest is already naturally healing itself through sprouts and seeds regrowing and animals moving right back in and the mushrooms coming up. Also, before they open trails, they have to figure out, are they safe, and remove any hazard trees. Then they are working hard on erosion control, so that if we do have that big rainy winter, all the soils that are exposed don't just wash into the creek. The next thing that they're looking at is an early detection program for weedy species, because in raw soil, not only do native plants get established, but also weedy species. And then, as you probably know, at Big Basin, primarily, almost all the structures were burned. So there's a very active campaign to rebuild visitor centers, education centers, trails, signage, parking lots, all that kind of thing. But there's also opportunity to do better, to not put things just back where they were in the heart of the forest or too close to a creek, but to locate things that are sensitively placed from a forest vantage, but also modern facilities, electric charging stations for cars, amphitheaters with great views, etc. So those are some of the things that they're looking for in terms of recovery.
Great, wonderful. This is great to hear. I'm combining a couple animal questions. First off, a quick one. So where can one find the pond turtles in Muir Woods? And along with that, what has happened to larger animals in the forest with this increased growth, and also with how they've been affected by the fires?
Right. So the western pond turtles have been reintroduced first at Muir Beach, which is just downstream from Muir Woods. And they've also been reintroduced at Rodeo Pond, that's in the Marin Headlands, and in a variety of ponds and reservoirs in the Marin Municipal Water District. And the idea is to reintroduce them where they have the best chance of surviving. And that was deemed to be at Muir Beach, and I'm telling you, it's worked. After 3 years of introductions, the population, they're all alive and growing and doing what they need. And then we're going to continue the zoo has more that they're hatching and growing up for us. So we will continue to reintroduce. And of course, we hope that they'll move around and reestablish and continue to expand, ultimately moving upstream to Muir Woods. Now, that's what we hope, and that's what we intend. The reason we didn't start at Muir Woods is we have so much big work going on, because we are taking out the old riprap, we're replacing the bridges, we're recontouring the creek to have a natural channel. We wanted to disturb as few streamside things as possible. So as we put all those pieces back together, that will be the right time to bring turtles back up. So this is the western pond turtle. It's the only native species in California. And we have people, when road work, for example, is happening, there's crews that watch to see if turtle nests are disturbed. And if they're in the way, those are the ones that go to the zoo. So it's a win-win all the way around. They get a second chance and a good home. Now, in terms of the large animals, today, well, most of the parks, the large animals are the occasional mountain lion, and then coyote and bobcat and fox are the middle predators, and the grazers like deer. And then, of course, the bigger birds, whether it be hawks or owls. And then, of course, the species we don't see very much, which are the bats. And one thing I learned from Emily Burns is, I thought it was kind of cute. She said most of these animals know how to shelter in place. They know how to go to moist spots down in the riparian or creekside areas. They can move out of the way of the fire. And so very little mortality has been observed, and they're immediately moving back in. So I think the animal report is really, really good. What we're noticing at Muir Woods is slowly the food chain is rebuilding. You can see fox and coyote. You can hear the spotted owls. We have the occasional bear that's come down from Sonoma. So little by little, the food chain is rebuilding there too, even though we are so close to the neighboring communities in an urban area.
Thank you, Sam. That's really good. That's really encouraging to hear. So I have another couple questions which I'm grouping together here. So one, do the burls from the redwood tree, are they exact clones of the original tree? And also, how would they use those burls? Can those burls, if they were to come off the tree, can they actually grow a new tree as well? Do you see that phenomenon inside your woods or in any other forests?
We were kind of surprised to learn that most redwoods at Muir Woods have asexually sprouted from burls. It's a real successful way for redwoods to grow. And that knobby thing called the burl is an asexual clone, or the genetic replication of the mother tree. We did learn something kind of interesting just a few years ago, again from Emily Burns, formerly of the Save the Redwoods League. So as I just mentioned, most of the redwoods have grown from sprouts coming off of burls, but it doesn't mean that the trees that are from burl sprouts next to a tree are from that tree, because the redwood forest is this huge community. And so the family circles that we had the slide of is those trees have grown up from the burls from some ancient tree. And sometimes at Muir Woods, you can see the snag in the center. However, the mother tree sends out roots which have the burls a distance away, and sometimes those sprout a distance away. So the genetic clone is not always near the mother tree. And also in these very ancient forests, the family circles sometimes have concentric circles. So it isn't always, some of them sometimes die and are missing. So it's not always a direct connection. And some of them really come from another concentric circle, but are closer to another one. So it's not as obvious as it would look in a natural forest. But the burl on the tree has the same genetic material. So when it sprouts, it has the same genetic material as the tree that it's on. Now, at Muir Woods, you can buy a burl that has been cut off from a living tree in certified forests that are about to be logged. And what that does is it allows you to bring a burl home, place it in a bowl of water, and have a mini redwood forest in your home. And that's kind of amazing. And I myself have done this, and it is kind of one of my popular gifts right now for people who need to have a little forest in their home to bring the wellness of the forest into their home. Having said that, I'm so glad that where they're sold, it's certified as something that comes from a tree that's about to be logged. So no tree is disfigured to have this opportunity. Now, eventually, and it's sometimes years off, that burl will die. However, once in an occasional while, a little bit of root is taken off with the burl. And if you're one of those lucky people, then you could plant it in your garden or a pot and it will grow into a tree eventually. So I don't know if that was kind of a roundabout answer, but we don't do it at Muir Woods. As I mentioned earlier, we allow the redwoods to reproduce naturally. So after a fire or flood, we have lots of young redwoods. That's actually what brought me to Muir Woods, was the Park Service was asking, how come there's no young redwoods in Muir Woods? And the answer from the team I was on is, first, you clean up the forest so you don't have healthy soil. And second, you stopped all the natural disasters of fire and flood and tree fall from happening. And when the redwood seeds drop each fall, they need to drop on a seedbed prepared by a catastrophe. A fire needs to have burned through, or a flood needs to deposit the sediment. And that's fresh mineral soil that the seeds need to grow in. And if you let disaster back in, you will see young redwoods coming in all on their own where they want to be. So that's why we believe in the disaster or crisis cycle. We let the creek flood. We have carefully reintroduced fire into a few places. And now we have many young redwoods.
It's great to hear. So I think we have time for another couple questions. One of them, so here at the garden, we have a ghost redwood on one of our burls. And the question is, would you be able to find any ghost redwoods in Muir Woods?
So Ryan, thank you for bringing up that. One thing, when I walk through the redwood forest at the Botanical Garden, I am in awe over the successful establishment of such a natural forest, from the ground covers and shrubs and tree companions to the varying aspects of redwoods, to that wonderful stump with all the plants growing on it, to the creek feature. I just am always in awe how I feel I'm in a forest like Muir Woods. And even the touches of the ghost tree, the albino redwood growing, that has to grow as a sprout because it, being a ghost tree, doesn't have the chlorophyll to do that amazing photosynthesis I was describing. So it has to get all its nutrients from the tree it's growing on. And if you walk at Muir Woods and go a little bit beyond Fern Creek, you will see our ghost tree. And there are several others in that area as well. And this is an amazing phenomena that's being studied, because we're now learning that they are part of the cleansing effect. You know, even redwoods need to go to the pharmacy, and their pharmacy is the ghost redwood that helps with toxins in the forest. So we're learning that they have an important role besides adding to the awe and wonder.
I love that awe and wonder comment. And I think we have time for just about one more question. And I think you've touched on this a bit, but I think maybe a little, so how has global warming affected the redwoods, and how will global warming affect redwoods over time? So I know you've talked a bit about increased carbon dioxide, but what any other information you could give us?
Well, this is really a scary prospect because, as you said in your introduction, the redwood range and the fog belt are the same. Redwoods are they're very tall, and being very tall and very big, they have very high moisture requirements, which of course they get from the rain and growing on the alluvial or streamside flats, but they also rely on nearly daily baths of fog. And they are amazingly adapted to squeezing the fog, the moisture out of the fog, which condenses on their needle-like leaves and drips to the ground and is thirstily slurped up by the very shallow root system. And so even though we have this amazing moment right now, It's very, very scary. And it's really worth looking at the Save the Redwoods League website, because they have brought in the best of scientists to model what would happen with even fewer days of fog. And that could mean less moisture and highly stressed trees. What does it mean in terms of catastrophic fires happening more frequently? What does it mean when we have dry months in January or dry months in August? Each of these presents different horrifying scenarios. And so this is a big, there's much research on what it would mean to the redwoods. And that's why protecting them and encouraging them is so important. And then taking our own actions at home and in our own life. So really, really, really good question.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Just goes to show how important our preserving our forests are and our natural areas.
Yeah.
So that's about all the time we have today for more questions, but I do want to invite everyone to come out to the garden again soon. Also, I want to thank Mia for her time and her support over the years and teaching us and contributing to the garden. I also want to invite all of you, if you do want to come out for small tours to the garden, please get in contact with my colleague Christopher Muniz. And I would like to thank all of you again for being Scribing Circle members, and I hope to see you around the garden sometime soon.
Can I have the last word?
Please do.
I love walking in the garden and also seeing the deeper lessons of plants through time, evolution, and where plants have lived in different places of the world. It's very encouraging in that theme of resilience and helping me learn and connect. So thanks for being a learning center as well as a place of refuge and well-being.
Thank you so much, Mia.